So over the last couple of years, I really got into running, and I wanted to try and find a way of cross-training alongside it, something that could improve my fitness without adding a ton more mileage to my weeks. Now, the most obvious choice was cycling, but as a long story short, I've never felt that comfortable cycling, and I've never particularly liked it either. So, in an attempt to make it more enjoyable, I bought a smart trainer, I downloaded Zwift, and I've spent roughly 30 hours on it trying to figure out why people get so obsessed with it. So as I say, I've never really been into cycling. I've always preferred running. I feel more comfortable running as my form of exercise. And I've never liked the idea of cycling on the road, and cycling in the gym is just really boring. But as I started doing more running and my mileage was getting higher, I wanted some form of cross training that was lower impact on my body, and cycling just seemed like the sensible approach. And after a couple of times of cycling in the gym again, realising how much I hated it, I decided to get Zwift. I'd heard quite a lot about Zwift over the years. I've got some friends that are cyclists, and so ultimately I decided to give it a go. Also, after watching a couple of YouTube videos of people on Zwift, I was about to say playing Zwift, but on Zwift, that really tempted me into it, because the sort of gamified experience of cycling made it seem like it'd be much more interesting and much more enjoyable experience. So my setup is honestly really basic. My smart trainer was pretty cheap. I think it was something like £220 from Decathlon. I think it's the Van Rysel D100. So yeah, like I say, that's probably the cheapest for a decent spec smart trainer. The bike is 15 years old. It was a mountain bike I used to use when I was 15. That's probably been used about 6 times back then. I think it was 300 quid. But yeah, that's 15 years old, so I'm pretty sure any used bike you could get off Facebook Marketplace or anything you can get your hands on will do the job. I've got a fan, I've got a laptop, and also my iPad. So yeah, nothing fancy at all. I don't have clipping pedals, I literally just use a pair of trainers. I think that was probably one of the things that surprised me, was over these 30 hours realising that that's all I actually needed. A lot of the people that I'd watched online with their Zwift setups had like a Zwift ride, had like a perfect sort of mounted setup for their screen, and everything just looked perfect. And I knew I wouldn't need that, but I just didn't think it'd be as good of an experience without those things. But to be honest, I don't really think I need much more. I am getting to the stage now where I fancy sort of upgrading the setup and maybe getting a road bike and getting some clipping pedals, and maybe changing the setup a little bit. But for the most part, this is all I need for what I want. So my first impressions was that it was definitely quite different to what I'd experienced before. At first it just felt like a video game version of cycling, but I'd say after like 15 or 20 minutes, I really started to understand why people liked it. It's just way more engaging than sitting on a normal exercise bike and staring at a wall. You know, you've got different things like the routes, workouts, other riders, races, progressions, and your brain just kind of buys into it surprisingly quickly. Obviously, I'm 30 years old, so I grew up in a world of video games, and this definitely just hits that spot quite well. And finally, saddle discomfort is very, very real. The second I started going over 30-40 minutes, my arse was not in a good way. So I think the biggest surprise for me was just how much effort it really was on the bike. I had assumed that my cardio fitness from running would carry over quite well, and it did, and I could have a relatively low heart rate. But if I wanted to get my heart rate into the, let's say 140s, 150s, like my high end of zone 2, I was having to put so much effort in just to get my heart rate up to that. My legs were just dying so quickly, and that happened early on, which I think was expected. But even now, after doing quite a few hours of cycling on there, I still find it so much more effort to put through my legs. And I think a lot of that is obviously just getting used to the rhythm. I'm probably not a very efficient cycler. Cyclist. So I certainly think that's something that I probably do need to work on. But at the moment, all I'm using it for is a second sort of form of fitness to complement my running. I'm not that focused on becoming the best cyclist that I can. But that's definitely what surprised me the most, is just how much my legs fell off. And I think equally as surprising as that was just how motivating Zwift was. Purely by having that screen and having the people around you to overtake, or you've got 2 minutes left of your interval of that workout, or you can actively see yourself move. When you put the effort in, you can see yourself moving forward quickly, and you can chase someone down that's in front of you. That is unbelievably motivating. It's the same as in running. when you're going on like long runs or you're just running by yourself and it's so much effort, and then you get to a race or a park run or something and suddenly it's so much easier, or suddenly you go so much faster. Having that constantly there when you're exercising is just so much more helpful than sitting in a gym on a spin machine and not really having that same motivation and just hoping that the 30 minutes is up sooner rather than later. I think what Zwift gets right is just the motivation and the convenience. I've got my trainer just set up in the room, so at any point during like a lunch break for half an hour or before or after work, I can just jump on immediately. I don't have to go to a gym, I don't have to go outside when it's cold during the winter, which is, I bought this in October, and so it's perfect for the winter months. And I think that's what Zwift really gets right, is that you can have that set up in your own house. It doesn't take up too much space. And it's just so much easier to go on and use, and you look forward to using it more because you might be able to enter a race or a group workout. So there's been times during training of those months, and also recently when I've been injured from, well, before and from the marathon, not having to go out and put impact through my knees but still being able to keep my cardio fitness going has been really helpful. I've struggled to get on as much, I'd say, over the last few weeks, certainly since the marathon. But it has been really beneficial for that. On those days before where my legs were just tired from a long run, I could go and do half an hour on that, even in a zone 1, and just get blood flowing through the legs, and that was much easier to do than going out for a run and doing a zone 1 outside. And certainly for any UK runners or cyclists, having the option of doing exercise indoors that's enjoyable is just a godsend through the UK winters. The idea of going out to do a run over the winter, or even just getting into your car to go to the gym over the winter, is horrible. So having that is just such a bonus. I think in terms of downsides, there's really not too many that Zwift get wrong. I think one of them is cost. I think if you already have a bike, it's still going to cost you at least £200-300 to get something set up. You could look on Marketplace or eBay. I didn't want to because I didn't really know exactly what I was looking for, and if I went to pick something up, I wouldn't know if I was getting a good deal or not. So I felt more comfortable buying something that was more reasonable new. But there's going to be a cost that's not insignificant to set up. And then on top of that, there is the monthly cost of Zwift. I think at the moment it's about £17. And then the other side of that, it simply doesn't replace outdoors. Like, I don't like the idea of cycling on the roads, but it doesn't replace that. At the end of the day, you are still inside, and sometimes it can still feel quite monotonous if you're doing like a long ride. But Zwift certainly does help, and having the option to put Netflix on or a YouTube video on in the background as well is really good. As a runner though, I actually think Zwift is the perfect complement to it. It lets you build aerobic fitness and put some more effort through your legs without having the same impact that running does. And I feel like it was a huge bonus to me for my fitness towards my half marathon last year and towards the marathon. And it's certainly something that I'm going to continue moving forward. I think mentally as well, it's been a really big positive. There's plenty of days during training where I just don't feel like going for a run, whether it's because it's raining outside or I'm feeling quite battered and bruised after a long run or a heavy session. Being able to jump on the bike even for 10 minutes makes such a big difference. I can't build myself up to say I'm going to go outside for 10 minutes to do a recovery run, but 10 minutes on the bike feels like no effort at all, just to jump on, because there's not much set up. You can get on, and then at 10 minutes you can decide if you want to do a bit more. And we all know what it's like when you first get out. Once you're going, you feel like you could carry on much longer. So most of the time I jump on the bike and say I'm going to do 10 minutes, and then I end up doing half an hour. So I think the boost mentally as well, and the consistency that it keeps throughout the week on those couple of days where I don't feel like going for a run, has been really beneficial to me. So after 30 hours of riding, do I get the Zwift height? I'm certainly planning for it to become a permanent part of my training plans now, at least a couple of times a week. I still prefer running, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but it's such a good complement to my fitness. And over the last few months I've really focused on my running, so I haven't wanted to do too many heavy workouts on the bike. I've mainly stuck to sort of zone 1, zone 2, and I've been really tempted to get into some Zwift races, but I don't have any plans for any running races coming up at this point. I still want to focus on it, but I'm definitely going to spend some more time doing some Zwift races and seeing if I can get a little bit better as a cyclist.